Hey, everyone. Welcome into her table. This is Apostle Dr. Tangela Mitchell-Rivers, and I have an amazing guest for you tonight. Jahzara Bradley is going to join us tonight talking about blooming through change, the metamorphosis. I am so excited about this interview. I cannot wait to introduce you. So, without any further delay, let me go ahead and get right on into this. She is an author, a publisher, an educational and financial consultant who empowers individuals to navigate life's complexities with confidence. I love that. She is Nicole Bradley. Candles.com is where tranquility and inspiration converge. Now, I've utilized Jahzara Nicole before, and her candles smell amazing. So, without any further ado, let's go ahead. Welcome in, Jahzara.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I don't know if you realized this, but 2 years ago, on it would be August 14th, we did an interview.
You know what? The
Okay.
the memory came up, and I was like, wow, really?
Yes.
Something about that. We're gonna have to search that a little bit further and see what that means.
All right.
Absolutely. So it welcome in. I'm so glad that you came in to join me once again.
Thank you
And
for having me.
of course, I know last time when we talked, we were talking about your books. This time we're going to talk about a personal story. And so here we're talking about blooming through change, the metamorphosis. Tell us about the metamorphosis.
The metamorphosis, and I believe it's so perfect that we're talking about that. Years ago, wow, it's been a while. Before my
Hmm.
kids were born. I got a butterfly tattoo. And so, if you understand the life cycle of the butterfly and how it goes through a metamorphosis, and sometimes, it starts as that caterpillar, and a caterpillar isn't very attractive, but it goes
Hmm.
through a process and it cocoons and then it goes into the beautiful state of the butterfly. And so I believe that we all go through something before we cocoon and bloom into that beautiful state. And so sometimes the process isn't beautiful, but the outcome is. And so I heard, I wish I could take credit for this, but I heard a lady um, last year on a podcast or something, and she said, and I kept thinking when I heard this, I said, why am I hearing this at this moment? And I said,
Hmm.
you know what, you're gonna have to tuck this away for another day. But it was so powerful what she said. She said, it always gets murky, muddy, and ugly in the middle.
Oh yeah. Oh
But the
yeah.
other side is
Absolutely.
beautiful. And I kept thinking
Absolutely.
at that time, I said, sound good. And something said, tuck it away because you're going to need it for later. And
For
so
later. And so here we are.
here we are. So a month later,
Oh.
after I heard that, I, I was so ill, Dr. Tangela. I suffer from acid reflux, and I would love to say to your listeners, you know your body better than anybody. And so when something isn't right with your body, don't say, "Oh, I'll give it another week or I'll give it this or that." When the moment you know something is not right with your body, go get it checked out.
Get a check. Yeah.
So I was feeling very ill and I chalked it up to acid reflux that I had. And I hadn't had acid reflux problems like this in maybe about a year or so. But
Hmm.
I couldn't keep any food down. I was so nauseous. And because I was regurgitating, anything that I would put in my body, my stomach hurt so bad from that motion. My
Mm-hmm.
throat was raw. And so I remember talking to a friend and I said, well, if it keeps up, I'll go see somebody. And he says, you need to go to the emergency room. And I said, it ain't that bad because I think a lot of times things become normal that we shouldn't let be normal. And so this was like a norm. It had become a norm for me. Which sounds weird hearing me say this, but I've been so ill with these symptoms for so long, it
Mm-hmm.
become normal. And so he said, you need to go get that checked out. And I said, "Eh, I'll go to urgent care." So I went to urgent care, and urgent care was like, oh, well, are you taking your medicine for acid reflux? I said, no, I'm out of it. So they said, oh, well, here's a script or whatever. And so the doctor there said, now, if you're still having these symptoms, you need to go to the emergency room.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm just going to take that acid reflux meds and I'll be okay. And so it continues. And so I go to the emergency room and I'm thinking it's just going to be another regular visit. They're going to say, oh, your acid reflux is out of whack, da da da.
Mm-hmm.
So they start doing tests and x rays and that kind of thing. And so, and so the doctor, he gave me morphine while I was in there. And I said, don't you think that's a little, aggressive? And
Mm-hmm.
he said, well, you've been ill and vomiting and all of that for 2 weeks and in pain. So, no. So,
Right.
okay. So then they come and they want to do another test and they want to do an ultrasound. And so I'm going like, you guys are, very thorough
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for acid reflux.
Mm-hmm.
So they do all of this testing and they come back and they say, hey, we did this testing and we did other testing because we wanted to follow up. We saw something on your kidney. I'm just like, yeah, well, yeah, y'all need to look at these tests more carefully. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, And so the emergency room doctor comes in and he sits with me and he says, yeah, we saw a mass on your kidney and you need to get that checked out. And I said, hmm. And from having taught biology and chemistry, I know a mass generally is a tumor. And so my mind just started going and I said, nah, they did all this. They don't know or
Yeah.
whatever.
I don't
So
know.
know, they, they saw something, but
Yeah.
they can't really know. And that's what I'm telling myself because I've learned to not go to the extreme, but I already knew what the extreme was. But I said, you don't know for sure,
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm telling myself. But whole time I'm like, they didn't did umpteen tests. So I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm gonna go get the MRI and see. And so I go get the MRI and I go back to my primary care physician and I said, hey, I didn't get those test results. It looks like, it's kind of a holdup. Can you tell me what the results said? And so I called the office and they said, well, we need you to come in and talk to the doctor. I
Mm.
said, oh, okay. I said, but you could just, tell me on the phone, what have you. And they're
Right.
yeah, you need to come in. So I go in to get the results, and I'm looking to go to a patient room. They say, yeah, you're going to go in the doctor's office. I said,
Hmm.
I think it's only been once in my lifetime I've been in the doctor's office where the doctor does their work, not the.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
said, that's different.
Uh-huh.
And so
Uh-huh.
I go, and she interprets the results and she's like, well, does anybody in your family have cancer? And I said, well, not now, but my mom had cancer and she passed away, and my first cousin had breast cancer and she passed away, I think a year before my mom did. But In my mind, I'm like, why are we talking about this?
Mm-hmm.
Says, yeah, there's a mass on your kidney. And I'm like, yeah, I just really want to get on with this. And she's like, yeah, and I think it's cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, why would you think that? And she said, well, it's taking up half your kidney.
Wow.
And I said, oh. And so she's looking at me and I'm looking at her and I just want to be gone. But she keeps talking to me. And the more she talks to me, the more sad I'm feeling. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, you're not going to break down in this office. And she's like, yeah, I want to send you to an oncologist and a nephrologist and a urologist. Well, when she said oncologist, I know that they handle cancer. And I said, okay, do you have any questions? And I'm trying to hold everything I have in me. And she says, but the oncologist will make a decision and tell you for sure. And I said, oh, so you don't really know if it's
Mm-hmm.
cancer. But I got, so I said, oh, okay. And she's just talking and talking. And she's like, and I want you to start eating like this. And I want you, and I'm listening to her. And
Uh-huh.
this lady said cancer. And that's where I'm stuck in my
So,
head.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And you're going to an oncologist and a somebody else and a somebody else. And I broke down in that office and she's like, well, she's trying to get me off the ledge. But
Mm-hmm.
now she's on the verge of tears. And I'm thinking to myself, you should have just gave me the paper and let me go. Because now you about to lose your stuff in here. And we both. And so my daughter's in the car waiting for me.
Oh.
And I get in the car and I just tell her what the lady said, the doctor, but I called her the lady. I said, this lady done said she
Uh-huh.
got cancer. And my daughter's like,
Mm-hmm.
no, she's baffled, but she was at the emergency room with me. And I said, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I boo-hooed like nobody has boo-hooed before. Well, somebody has, but I
Yeah.
had to cry like that in so long. My ribs were hurting. And
Mm-hmm.
she told me what she wanted me to do, how she wanted me to eat, and um, she said, "And I know you don't drink sugary drinks." I said, "Well, who told you that?" I don't need sugary drinks. Yes, I do. I saw somebody selling ices on the way here, and I thought I was gonna get one, but they were
No.
on the side of the road. They had packed up and left before I got out the doctor's office, and it it really hearing that really did something to me. It
Mm-hmm.
I believe that was when it started right then and there, and so it this happened after Pentecost Sunday in 2024. I remember on Pentecost Sunday so vividly. My daughter was seeing an oncologist as well, and they thought she had cancer and was going to have to remove something to do the biopsy, and it was in her chest. And I remember I prayed at church and I heard God say, I'm bigger than the thing, because I knew what I was looking at. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was praying for my daughter on Pentecost Sunday. I was thinking my stuff wasn't going to be no problem. And he
Mm-hmm.
says, I'm bigger than the thing. And so my daughter had gone and got a clean bill of health.
Okay.
And so I said, okay, when it's my turn to go see the oncologist, they're going to tell me the same thing because God said he's bigger than the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I held on to that. Well, I go see the oncologist, very nice. And she says, yeah, we won't know if it's cancer until we do a biopsy and take a sample of it. She said, but I'm going to refer you to a surgeon. And She told me everything he was gonna say. He was gonna, want to do surgery and that kind of thing. And I said, okay. And she said, once we get that tissue, then we'll know. She says, now I want you to be prepared because he's probably going to want to do surgery because it's taking up half your kidney. And I said, oh, okay. And I'm like, well, God said he bigger than the thing. And I saw how God worked in my daughter's situation. And I
Right.
think this is what it's going to be for me.
Okay.
So I'm holding on to that, and and so I'm going to all of these appointments and so forth between seeing the surgeon, getting blood work done, all of this other kind of stuff, and um, I'm not doing my sugary drinks, and I'm eating a lot better. I'm praying and I'm fasting, and so I go see the surgeon. I forgot
Mm-hmm.
his title. And very nice gentleman and handsome, I must say as well.
Okay.
And he says, yeah, he sits down and he says, you're blessed. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Because I hear him, but I'm really salty that I got to be sitting here with him. So,
Mm-hmm.
I've hyped myself up. I said, well, they're going to want to do a biopsy and they're going to take some tissue and they got to look at it and, you're going to get a clean bill of health. And he says, we need to do surgery. And I said, I'm prepared. I'm shaking my head because I'm already ready and for him to say this. But I said,
Okay.
how about this? Because I'm real good at negotiating. How about we take some medicine or something and see if that works? And, then we come back here and we talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And he smiles and he says, you're real healthy. And so now I'm, thinking my writing terms oxymoron. I'm healthy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I got
But you can do
cancer.
her.
I want
Come
to
on.
do surgery now.
Yeah.
How does that work?
Right.
And so he says, we need to do surgery and we need to remove the kidney. So now I'm sitting up straight in my chair and I
Mm-hmm.
said, this ain't what I came in here expecting to hear. I said, you want to remove my kidney? I said, but can you just do a biopsy or, and I'm making bargains and I don't even know what the treatment is. But I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
could you laser something or whatever it is? And he
Mm-hmm.
said, we could do that if it wasn't so much of your kidney, if it was a smaller amount. He said, and I could still do it, but it wouldn't be right because it would affect your other organs and you're still going to need to have the surgery. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, okay. And he said, so, I got an opening. I think this was like a Tuesday. He's like, I got an opening on Friday. I said, Friday when?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, this. I was like, oh, no. Uh, nah, I need a little time to process what you
Yes,
said.
yeah.
Um, nah, it can't be this Friday. Nah. It-
So let me pause you here because when you already had your mind set up that you were having surgery, you were just thinking biopsy surgery, not a complete go in and remove. Right.
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm thinking, oh, I've had a biopsy before, and I'm thinking, they just snip a little tissue. And so when he said the whole kidney had
Yeah.
to go, and he said, but you can live with one kidney and you can be okay. And I'll tell you later on. I'll tell you when he said that, he was very kind. His words were I, nice and everything. And I said, but this man don't know. And I'll get back to this later on because he did know. And
Okay.
so I I walked out. I didn't cry in front of him. I kept it together. My daughter was in the room, the one who had gotten a clean bill of health from cancer,
Mhm.
and I could tell she was shaking up. And I said, "You heard what he said?" Because now I need to make sure I heard him clearly, but I know what I heard, but somebody else gotta really confirm it because it just didn't seem like it was real. And she said,
Mhm.
"Yeah," and I said, "Yeah." But God said he's bigger than
Right.
the thing.
We
So
got to remember. Yeah, come on.
he said he bigger than the thing. But I'm like, I'm thinking I'm going to be delivered the same way my daughter was. And so I think that well, I know we want God to show up for us in a big way. We want God to do things, but then we want him to do it how we want him to do it. So I'm like,
Mhm.
well, I wanted to do a matrix on this. And so for some of your listeners who might not be familiar with the movie The Matrix, I thought I was gonna, this is it. And I'm just
You're
gonna
gonna come up
wiggle
under
on
it.
under it. So I said, man, this this has thrown me. And so I just kept saying, but God said he's bigger than the thing. And so then he spoke to me and he said, every time you go out of your house, every time you go to an appointment, he said, this is the only thing you got to do. And I'm like, okay. He said, I want you to go out fixed up. I don't want you to look like what these people said. So
Mhm.
nobody should know that what you're going through or whatever. He said, all you got to do is show up. And so it reminded me, someone sent me the scripture, I believe it was Exodus 14:14, where God said to those Israelites, you don't even have to fight. You
Come
just
on.
be there and I got it. So I said, okay, God, you said all I got to do is just walk out this house looking fabulous
That's
and
it.
you got it. Because you bigger than the thing. And so
Yeah.
there were days when I would get sad and I remember you can quote God's word back to him. So I was
Yeah.
like, God, you said you bigger than the thing. That's
Right.
all I know. I I had some scriptures I was standing on, but some days it was God. Remember when you said on Pentecost Sunday you were bigger than the thing? I
Come
said,
on.
God, it's looking like the valley of the shadow of death right here. But
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
said it.
Right.
And so it came up to surgery day and I'm shaking and
Mm.
you know, surgery day came after 7 cancellations. Okay.
Okay.
But for
Hold on 1 second, because I want to come back to that. I'm going to take a short break, and then we're going to come in and get back to these 7 surgeries. Because what?
yeah.
Okay. Stay tuned with us, guys. Go grab you something to drink and come right back. We'll be right back. Welcome back in, guys. We are back, and now we're getting ready to hear the remainder of the story as Jahzara continues on with her story of the metamorphosis. Go ahead.
Thank you. So it was 7 surgeries. We had 7 dates and everyone got canceled for some reason. Something would come up. One of them was around Labor Day, and it was around Labor Day, and that one got canceled because it was like Labor Day weekend, and
Mm.
he has somewhere to go, and the nurse called us. She was like, "Well, he could probably squeeze you in." I was like, "Oh no, no,
No. Mm-mm.
like,
No,
you can't
thank
squeeze me in." Like
you.
if
Yeah.
he trying to go party or whatever, I understand.
Right.
And so that one got canceled, and then it got rescheduled, and something happened, and then we get to October of last year, and it was gonna be on Tuesday, but then the hurricane was coming, and so
Mm.
the office called and said, well, the hospital doesn't want any surgeries to go on. And so it was that weekend, the hurricane, I think it was over like Thursday. And they were
Mm-hmm.
like, well, maybe you could come Friday. And then I'm like, but Friday would be the first day after it's projected to be over. And I don't know what the rules is going. And I said, no, let's find another day.
Uh-huh.
So the eighth scheduling is when I went in for the surgery. And I said, you know, sometimes I would think something is a coincidence. The first time, okay, yeah. But seven different times I said, okay,
Yeah.
God has worked it out already. And
Mm-hmm.
I just remember the scripture, all you got to do is show up. And so
Yeah.
I get to the hospital on surgery day, and I now I will say this day I went in there just like I'm here. I wasn't fixed up or anything. I had gotten my hair fixed up, but you know, one this day, and I took a picture. I just looked drained, like the life had just been sucked out of
Mm-hmm.
me. I said, "Well, God, you said you bigger than the thing, so all I got to do is show up. So I know you gonna show up and show out."
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was. And so when I finally get to the floor to get checked in, one of the nurses says, "Well, you're gonna be okay, because all you got to do, you don't have anything else to do. You got here. All you got to do is show up." And you showed up. I said, "Well, look at her speaking my words."
Come on. Come on. Come
So
on.
I said, "Okay." And I came out of surgery. I think the surgery was maybe 4 hours long. I came out of the surgery, and I knew I stayed in recovery longer than I've ever been in a recovery room with the nurse, and I had two different IVs hooked up, and they said that was standard. I said, "Oh, okay." And they kept giving me pain pills, and I had told the doctor prior to. I said, and people laugh when I say this, but I meant it. I said, I can't take y'all big boy pain pills, so don't give me none of that. I can't do it. And
Yeah.
so all I was given was Tylenol, that you can buy over the counter. I would take two of
Okay.
those. Um, But I found out the reason that I was in recovery so long, and you have no control over what happens to you when you're under anesthesia.
Yeah.
But um, they were giving me fentanyl while I was under. And I don't know how they were dosing me, but I heard the nurse say the reason I was in there so long was because my heart rate had gotten low. And I said, now I know I told y'all, don't be
Right.
giving me y'all big boy meds,
Yeah.
but you have no control.
Yeah.
So I said, okay. And
Mm.
I came through the surgery. It was only taking those two Tylenol. I think it's 550 or 650 or something like that for pain every couple hours, and that's all I had. And prior to the surgery, I had had a biopsy on my breast because they said they saw something, and I said, okay. So that was like 5 days before the surgery. So when I
Wow.
finally get home, I said, these people never responded to me about my breast biopsy. So my doctor says, come on in. And so, like, it was maybe 5 days after the surgery, and I'm still just trying to figure out how to walk. I had to
Yeah.
think myself up. And so she says, come on in. I said, I really don't feel well. And so she's like, you got to come on in. And I think sometimes people can be insensitive. So I
Mhm.
had to hobble myself in with a pillow that I took from the hospital and used that as a cushion for my stomach. So I go into her, and my biopsy came back okay.
Mhm.
There they saw some stuff there, but it was benign. And so
Okay.
then a couple days later, maybe 3 days later, I go to the surgeon to hear my results from the surgery. So I go to the
Mhm.
surgeon, and he says, everything was wonderful, everything worked out good. We got all the cancer, it didn't spread anywhere. You don't have to take any chemo, you don't have to take any radiation, you don't have to take any medication or
Come on.
anything.
Come
And I
on.
said,
Thank you, Lord.
oh God, you showed up.
Come
You
on.
showed up in a
Yeah.
mighty way,
Yeah.
because I would be telling you a story if I was to tell you I wasn't scared about that breast biopsy. I was really
Mhm.
scared about the breast biopsy because my mom passed from breast cancer, and my first cousin did as well. And so I would love to say to your listeners, um, please get your mammograms yearly. I had
Mhm.
got the mammogram in 22 and 23. I said, I am so tired of going to doctors, because in 22 I had my gallbladder removed. I said, I'm so tired of going to doctors and the specialists. And so in 23, I took a break from everybody and did not go to the doctor. So I didn't have a mammogram in 23.
Mhm.
And so I beat myself up all of every time I had to go back for another ultrasound for my breast, another MRI. And I said, man, I wonder if you would have went to the doctor last year, if you wouldn't have been so tired. And I said,
Mhm.
well, you didn't. You can't go back in time.
Right.
It is
Right.
what it is. But 22, everything was great. I can't speak for 23. I don't know. But in
Mhm.
24, just that short period of time, there was some things that was concerning them. And I was so afraid of the biopsy, the pain, or whatever. But those
Mhm.
people were so nice. They let me listen to my music, and they laughed and they joked with me and made me comfortable for the biopsy, the recovery from the kidney surgery. It was a recovery, but I thank God that I was able to only, manage with the Tylenol. Not, I can't
Yes.
take those other pain pills, and because I only have a solitary kidney now, I
Right.
be able to take it anyway. So that was
Mhm.
my only option, and back to my results, because I said I was going to talk about the surgeon and how he was, so confident. And so
Mhm. Mhm.
I looked at my scar and everything, and I told him, I said, my scar is beautiful. I, I have other scars that I had really hated in the past from having surgery, but this surgery made me realize, hey, if you got the wound from the battle,
Yeah.
that means you overcame the battle.
That's it. That's
So it doesn't matter what it looks like, you overcame. And he said, the next time you're here, I'm going to have to show you my scar. He said, I had the same surgery done. He said, and your scar looks way better than mine. I said, well, of course, you know who did it.
right. Right. Who did your surgery?
So we laughed and joked about that, but just to know that he was so confident, and he would tell me, he said, you got another 50 years in you. I said, you do know how old I am. He said, I know, and you got another 50. He said, you
yeah.
have to look at it as your body is the house. And so sometimes you have to update the windows in the house, or you have to update something to keep the house, still in operable condition. He said, so that's how you look.
Mhm.
I said, but man, that was kind of extreme. But to know that he had the same surgery and was able to, just be so peaceful with it. And
Mhm.
before the surgery, he asked me what I thought about it. I said, well, I got to tell you, I'm not really happy about this. He said, good. That's good to hear. He said, because I would think you were really weird if you
Right.
were like,
It
yeah,
was. Let's do
please,
it.
I want to have surgery. Let's go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do want to say, that I was able to talk to you throughout this ordeal, and you handled it like a champ. Like some days you couldn't even tell, you know what I mean? Like I would literally forget, oh, Jahzara had, you know what I mean? And even when you were going through prior to the surgery, you would be like, I got something to share with you, but in due time. And I'm like, okay, I wonder what's going on. But I would just pray for you, that whatever it was, that God would just make a way. And so when you did share, I was like, what? I don't even know how many days it was after the surgery, but we had talked, and in your countenance, your just everything about you was like it was new. You know what I mean? Like your conversation was even different. And so you were like, it was more of a uh belief in God. Like I truly believe that we have to endure some things with God in order to fully know him and in order to fully trust him to the level that we should, right? And so when we haven't really been through anything, it's almost like, and not to say that you hadn't been through anything before that, but when we haven't really been through anything, and we haven't really set with God to take us through, right? Because it's one thing to go through something without God. It's another thing to go through something kind of in there with God, but it's a totally different thing when you don't have nothing but God. You know what I
Never.
mean? And
Right.
so, knowing that your support system, like I don't really know your relationship with your mom, but I could just tell that there was some closeness there, right? So your mom, your daughter was there, but your mom wasn't. And
Right.
so that kind of crutch, you know what I mean? It was like, I could tell my daughter, but this is my daughter. That's my mom. God kind of was
Mhm.
like, yep, I got it though. I got it. She's not here, but I got you. And you could tell that your relationship got stronger with God throughout this whole ordeal. Even though I didn't know what was going on, I knew it was serious, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And so just to see you now on the other side, even when I was reading your reply back to coming on to her table, and I was just like, it's something different. It's something different. And so I am so honored to know you, so honored to see how God is shifting you through things and circumstances that sometimes those things and circumstances can kill us, but it made you stronger. And so I just commend you for that. I commend you for really seeking God, getting in and in his face. No,
Yeah.
this is what you said. So I'm expecting this to be the outcome. Um, yeah. So I just want to share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And, you know, sometimes there were people who would say, why didn't you tell me? And I said, I remember telling somebody something and it had slipped out.
Mm-hmm.
And I when we hear cancer, we think death.
Yeah.
We do. And because I've known people who've passed away from cancer, I'm like, ugh. But
Mm-hmm.
I will say I was not scared if that's what it was gonna be. Um, Now I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I do want to be here in that rocking chair telling somebody, hey, bring me some lemonade and that type of
Yeah.
thing. But I said I had a piece about myself, but I remember telling somebody and it was almost like this. I was like, oh no, don't fall apart.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, don't start
Yeah.
that. No, no, don't plan my funeral because no, no, no.
Right.
And so
Right.
I didn't, want people. with that because
Yeah.
when my mom was going through cancer and I was being there as a support, and I would hear different things and it would tear me up. And I said, well, you're not the one sitting in that seat as much as
Mm-hmm.
it's tearing you up. So if your mom needs to fall apart, y'all both can't be boohooing. You know,
Right.
that's kind of
Right.
how and I would boohoo by myself, but you got to be there as a support to say, hey, hey, I'm here, and allow that person to fall apart. Two people falling apart,
It's not gonna
who
work.
gonna lift the
Yeah.
other
It's
person
not gonna
up?
come on.
It doesn't. I know we're all humans, but I was just like, I didn't want nobody planning my funeral and feeling
Right.
sorry, and because God said He was bigger than the thing, and that's all I know. And I know a lot of people lie and they say stuff just to be saying it, but I told and I have a conversational relationship with God that I'm sure a lot of people don't have to the degree that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not disrespectful, but sometimes I'd be
No.
like, God, now I know you ain't Ray Ray, because Ray Ray be sitting out lying, saying any other. You said, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
your word says that I can bring your word back to you.
Back to
Now
you. Come
you
on.
said this is what you said. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
even know how it's gonna work out, but all I know is you said you bigger than the thing, and I had some days with pain, but I had my gallbladder removed, and having my gallbladder removed was more pain than this kidney removal. Having a C-section was more painful
Mm.
than the kidney removal, and I'm not minimizing it. Now, it was some
Yeah.
pain. I mean,
Yeah.
I felt worse pain, but
Mm-hmm.
um, it's something about being there and all you can do. And my mom has said this before. She said, you could go through a lot of things in life with people, but there are some things where you got to sit in that seat by yourself. And I said,
Yourself. Yeah.
I don't know what she talking about. Like, what? And when it came to the journey, I was like, man, people say different things, but nobody goes through that, you know,
Mm-hmm.
journey. They can be there, but I'm like,
It's
when
you.
you hovered
It's
over that toilet, just oh, or
mm-hmm.
days when I would have to force myself out the bed, to get up out the bed and do something because I was suffering from iron deficiency, so I was
Mm-hmm.
always cold, even here in Florida. And so people would be like, "Well, how
Right.
are you cold?"
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm just cold.
Yeah.
I got
Yeah.
an iron deficiency." Sometimes I'm gonna say, this cancer thing that's in my body then
Mm.
caused me to be anemic, and now I'm cold. And I said, well, I just have an iron deficiency. And sometimes when it gets low, I just get cold. I said, but don't worry about that. Because I'll
Mm-hmm.
put on a sweatshirt, a hoodie, I'm gonna be okay.
Right.
Sometimes, it taught me like you don't know what somebody's going through, and so sometimes things seem abnormal to you, things seem weird to you until you endure it. And I said, people just talking to me crazy. I like, she must be off because ain't no way in the world it could be 80 degrees outside and you cold. But when I would lay hands on them, they would feel how cold my hands were. I said, but I'll be
Mm-hmm.
okay. I just get my iron or whatever. I'll just give me some hot cocoa. And Tangela, one night I was in such a tizzy because I was cold and I was frustrated, and I like, why do I have to feel like this? And I went into a Denny's and I told the waitress that, I said, could I just get some hot chocolate? I said, I'm so cold. And she said, sure. And
Mm-hmm.
so she brought me some hot chocolate, and I was waiting for some food because I would crave vegetables, and that's how I know my iron levels are low, especially like I could taste broccoli. So I wanted some broccoli and something, and I said, I know it's a weird combination. She said, no, I say, yes, it is. Because I'm thinking to myself, this is weird. And she
Crazy.
just kept bringing me a hot chocolate. She said, I'm supposed to charge you for every one. She said, but I just can't do it. Now, this lady didn't know me. She didn't know nothing about me. And if she would have charged me for every hot chocolate she was bringing me, I would have paid it because I just wanted to be warm. And she said, I, I don't, I don't know. I said, it's okay. Thank you. I said, God will send you who you need to be around somebody. Sometimes we think it's going to be people we know or it's gonna be a
Mhm.
certain way. I said, here he done used this stranger to just be so
Mhm.
kind and compassionate. And I said, I know it's got to look weird. I'm guzzling all these hot chocolates or what have you.
Mhm.
And she's just like, I'll bring you some more. You want some more? And I said, well, thank you. Um, and it was just you know, it was a journey, but it wasn't the worst journey I've been on. I always thought that if something like that happened to me, it would just be horrible. It would be crushing. But to hear God say, I'm bigger than the thing, and all you got to
Mhm.
do is leave out your house and look fabulous when you leave. I said, well,
Yeah.
God, I love me some mascara and a good lip gloss.
Listen, come on and put it on. Put it on
I said, this
and
is
be
all he tell you
beautiful.
to do. You know,
Yes.
and just believe his word, and he was true to his word. I know I said it before. I thought he was gonna deliver me another way. I really did. I really thought I was gonna dodge all of that. And when I had to have the biopsy for the breast, I said, and I told him, I said, God, it's getting tight now. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
My daughter was going through this thing and the biopsy thing with the breast and then the kidney thing. I said, now you delivered her. I was so happy and excited. And I said, oh, it's just smooth sailing for me. And then
Mhm.
I told him, I said, oh, it's getting tight now. I said, you already know, and I can't run the flim flam on you, but I just gotta tell you,
Mhm.
felt like
Mhm.
Cinderella with that slipper on. I'm like, ouch. Like I'm in here, but it's tight.
Yes. Oh man. I'm excited though because I'm gonna pause right here. I'm gonna pause right here. Give me 1 second. We're gonna come right back. Go ahead, grab you something to drink. Come on, pop back in. We'll be right back. And we're back. All right. So I wanted to just go in, Jahzara, I want you to share with the audience 1 to 2 minutes. At what point, how did you get to? Because so often, um, we hear cancer, we hear sickle cell, we hear diabetes, we hear whatever, right? And we get stuck. And it's almost like we forget that we have a comforter. We forget that we have a healer. We forget because now what man has said has taken precedence over what God has said. So how did you get to that level of trusting God despite what was being said to you?
Okay. I think I got to that level because I had a friend. I have a friend, not had, but she would say, you know what? We just gonna fast about it. We gonna fast for this many days. We're gonna focus on the scripture. So I think it was that relationship, having somebody to fast and pray with me, having somebody to just speak the word to me,
Mhm.
on days when it was just a notion to get up and get moving and do things. My pastor would pray and fast with me. And I think just having people who weren't embracing the thing, because that's what I'll call it, the thing. They weren't
Mhm.
talking about the thing. They was just people just telling me what God could do and me remembering who God is, and who he's been. And something a lady told me years ago, I held on to that as well. God ain't brought you this far to leave you. And I said, well, God, now we done been through some things. And so I don't think this is where my story is going to stop right here.
Mhm.
But if it is, and I would just remember different scriptures. You know, God gave me this saying as I was going through, which is going to be the title of my next book. God gives you umbrellas for the storm. And I just said, okay, all right.
I like that. I like
So
that.
the storm will come, but he gives you umbrellas. And I thought about Daniel, and I read Daniel during that time, and I said, wow. Like, I never understood the book of Daniel the way that I did on the
Mm,
journey. And I just like, okay. I mean, I, there are others, David from the Bible, but it was something about Daniel, the book of Daniel, that just really, my understanding, and just reading his word, my understanding just increased. So I would say that was it.
okay. Awesome. All right. Okay. I just wanted to highlight you in that moment because I think it's so important that people understand the importance of relationship with God, and that there's always a time in our life. I don't I mean, throughout history, throughout the word, it tells us there's always been a time that we have to get locked in with God. Like, you can't just live off of what mama them said and grandma them told. Like, you got to have that personal relationship with him, right?
Yes.
And we have to know that we know that we know that we know without the shadow of a doubt who he is and what he is capable of doing, despite the rain, because he will provide the umbrellas. I love that. He's gonna bring the umbrellas. It's gonna rain, but he got the umbrellas. I love that. So give us a some words of wisdom, encouragement, as we get ready to close out for tonight. Just some words of wisdom or encouragement, and then also, how can the listeners get in contact with you? Because you have so many services that you offer: candles, books, oh, life insurance. You're an author, you're a published, so many different things. So how can they get in contact with you?
Okay. My website is www.nicolebradleycandles.com, and there's a contact us section on there. So if anyone were wanting to, send a message there, I will get that. I would say words of encouragement. Um, we all have to hear from God and have our own relationship with God, as not as Dr. Tangela said. I saw God do miracles in other people's lives, and I read about miracles, but it's something about a up close personal miracle that you experience yourself when you see and experience God do it for you, and that he doesn't have to, he's not obligated. You
Right.
understand who God is, and it I think that we have to realize and understand God knows what it's going to be from the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're the ones who are just catching up,
Right.
getting the understanding. He already know how it's going to go. And
Mm-hmm.
just it I wake up some days just in awe because of what I've been through, and I'll look out the window, see the sun shining, and be like, "Thank you, God."
Yes. Come
If
on.
nothing else,
That's
because
things.
I just some days I just run down my gratitude to Him. Thank you
Mm-hmm.
for this. Thank you for that. I remember that, and if you don't do anything else, which I hope you do, but
Right. Right.
just I know what I went through is not everybody's typical story. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't take it lightly. And for that, it's just like, woo, this could have went another way,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And that was one of the things that I would like to tell people. please go see the doctors. I know a lot of times we don't want to, but one of the things the surgeon told me was kidney cancer, renal cell carcinoma, goes undetected a lot of times because it presents as something else. In my
Mm.
situation, it was presenting like acid reflux. And when you don't go and get checked out and, stay on your providers, if you know something doesn't feel right in your body, keep going back. Like, hey, mm-mm, mm-mm. You got to be your biggest advocate. And so, my level of cancer, even though it took up half my kidney, was stage 1B. There are 4 stages. And
Mhm.
so to hear 1B, and he gave me the numbers of how close it would be to stage 2. I don't know how long that had been lingering in my body. I don't know. But please, get checked out, go to those appointments. If you're not feeling well, that's not something you should be getting used to. Oh, this is just normal for me. No, when you're in pain and you're experiencing things like that, that's a manifestation that something on the inside is not right. So don't get used to being in pain and not feeling well. Don't do that, because we were able to catch this thing at the early stage. Um, but that God handled that. But I'm just saying, because it's something that goes quite undetected. Had I never gone to the emergency room, I don't know what
Yeah.
that could have been. And I'm glad that I did go and that God worked it out for me. But I would just say, please make sure you're going to your checkups and following up. Even if they just say, hey, good job, you're healthy. Don't accept being in pain and not feeling well. You don't have to.
Amen. And I just want to interject too, and we didn't talk about it, but to highlight that oftentimes when we have illnesses, diseases, it's a result of trauma
Yes.
trapped in and it doesn't have a way to come out. And so then it manifests into a disease. So it's important for us to face those traumas, whatever it may have been, and no matter how painful it may be to go into those traumas, but to get healing from those things because unforgiveness, like we hold grudges against people, we mad, we got pent up anger, we have all of this stuff, and it's just it doesn't have a way out. So it manifests as an illness, a disease, and when we don't do what we need to do, um, yeah, then we have these things. So, it's important to make sure that we're looking at it from a spiritual perspective as well. What's inside of me that I haven't dealt with that is now manifesting as cancer, diabetes, congestive heart failure? What am I dealing with? And so, in addition to getting your checkups, make sure that you're checking in with your spiritual roots to see what's happening and can I prevent it another way. So thank you for
And
saying
I'm
that.
so glad that you brought that up. I actually started reading this book a couple of weeks ago about Healing Your Body by Dr. Louise Hay. And she
Mhm.
talks about that in the book, you know, just about every illness you could think of. And I was just seeing my medical provider
Mhm.
yesterday, and we were talking about something. And she says, I wonder if something, if you experienced a trauma related. And I was like, I don't know, come on, let's
Mhm.
just get to, what we got to do or whatever. And she said, no, these things don't usually just pop up. And I said, oh man, come on. I
Yeah.
just, I want to get, and when we unpacked it,
Come
I
on.
said, I'll be doggone.
Yep.
We unpacked it back to maybe this incident that happened. It was like maybe 1992, 1993. And I had never thought about it. And I don't want to take up too much time, Dr.
Yeah.
Tangela, but what she said was the brain wants you to be okay. So what happened in that situation was the brain said, "We'll just tuck this away. We won't deal with this." And
Yep.
you just get in survival mode.
Come
And when
on.
she said that, I said,
Yes,
and I
ma'am.
felt like 20 pounds lifted
Oh,
off of me.
yeah, absolutely.
It
Yeah.
was what you're saying is so amazing and it's so true. And it's part of the healing process. I never thought about it until here recently on my journey where you can't heal from what you won't acknowledge.
Okay.
So if it's tucked away and not dealt with,
Right.
yeah, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes we don't even realize that we've tucked it away. Like, it was so traumatic that I don't ever want to remember it. And so I'm not going to remember it, right? But your body does. Your body remembers every scenario. And so here you've forgotten 20, 30 years ago, 40, 45, whatever, of that one thing that happened. But back there, your brain was like, oh no, like we haven't dealt with this. And so though it was tucked away, your body began, it just moved throughout your body. Our body, the mind body spirit connection is so amazing. It's so amazing. um to sit here like, yeah, let's talk about trauma. Let's talk about it. So yeah, we didn't get into it, but definitely, and maybe we could do a part two.
Yeah, I would love to because
Yeah,
it
I
what
think
you're saying is
I would
so
love to connect with you after you read the book. Yeah. And let's discuss it. So yeah, let's set that up. We can definitely
yes,
come in and talk because you do massages too, right?
I do.
Yeah.
I
So
do.
I mean that's part of, so
Yeah,
yeah.
and you're so right because it was one of the options that she told me about dealing with this pain. Actually, it's my acid reflux. But yeah,
Hmm.
I would definitely love to talk and discuss it with you because it was so eye opening. And this is
Hmm.
it goes back to what I said about you got to stay on these people about things regarding your health. I I just got to a point where I'm like,
Right.
now I shouldn't still be on this acid reflux medication. And I finally found the right provider who said, let's look at something. Because throwing this pill at you
Yeah.
is, and it was just,
Come on.
when I say wow, I said, now I've been going to doctors for umpteen years about this and finally found the right person.
Hmm. You
She
have
said,
to
you
keep
take a
looking.
herbal
Yeah.
supplement.
There you go. There you go. Yeah.
Somebody
When
who
we
don't want to throw a pill at me. I said, I can't believe it.
Exactly. And we have to search for those people because, I mean, the medical, we know the industry, most of it is about the money. It's
Yeah.
about the money. Let's keep you sick. You come back. I got another pill for you. That hurts too. Come on, I got something else for you. But no, let's treat the root. Let's treat the root. Let's not just pacify it and put a ban. I need you to treat this because I don't want to deal with this. So,
Right.
yeah. Okay. Well, this was fun and exciting and
Yes.
enjoyable.
Thank you.
Um, and I look forward to us connecting at a later time for us to talk about the trap trauma. I don't know. We'll think of something. We'll think of something. But thank you guys so much for coming in. Jahzara, thank you for coming in and sharing your story
Thank
of
you.
um, metamorphosis, how you were, I wrote it down to one of your quotes. I had to allow God to cocoon me so that I could metamorph. I love that. You should put
Thank,
down a shirt. Should make you a shirt.
thank you.
But
I right.
yeah, something to that effect. The metamorphosis, the metamorphosis collection. There you go.
Ooh-wee. Look at God.
Yes, come on. Everything is has a purpose. It has a purpose. But thank you guys so much for coming in and sitting at her table where healing, equipping, and restoration is served. I will see you all next time with our next featured guest. It could be you. If you're looking to share your story, connect with me at www.herdestinyactivated.com or shoot me an email at tangela@herdestinyactivated.com. You all have a blessed evening, and Jahzara, take care. We will see you next time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.